Folks, Casali Files here. Joe Casali just got out of Spider-Man No Way Home, and oh my God, they should just call this movie Spider-Man Endgame. This was everything I needed this to be. I don't even know what to fathom anymore. I wish I was seeing this again tomorrow, but again, it's sold out everywhere. God bless cinema, because this is to get back into the movies, to just have fun again, enjoy cinema. If you've been a fan of Spider-Man on the big screen since 2002's Spider-Man with Tobey, and oh my God, I can't. I love this movie to pieces. It was everything I needed it and more. It was devastating. I cried so many times. This is a celebration of Peter Parker. Folks, this was insane.
Folks, I just walked out of Spider-Man No Way Home. I thought about just putting a compilation of myself just staring off into the distance. I didn't know if that would get the point across, but that's pretty much how I feel here. People walking by me. Oh my God, bro. That shit was mind-blowing. Everything you could want and more. I can't wait to talk about this with you guys, because there's so much. This show might take like 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours. Like, there's so much we can get into. Oh my God, that was a roller coaster, a fucking roller coaster. Yeah, that movie takes you for a ride more than any Marvel movie, even Endgame, because Endgame, you kind of know what we're getting at least a little bit. This, you think you know, oh shot, you don't know what's going on. The whole time keeps you on the edge, keeps you guessing. All the good moments that you could ask for, hit. All right, I can't wait to get the show started, because it's going to be a blast.
All right, folks, just finished No Way Home. Wanted to make sure I was around people, talking some minor spoilers, but overall, you know, the film lived up to the hype for sure. It's not good, it's very good. Whether it's a solidified top 5 Marvel movie will be, you know, that'll take some time to tell, and definitely a rewatch, but amazing characters, amazing growth from Tom Holland as the MCU Spider-Man now. Couldn't have, you know, without spoiling it too much, couldn't have teed it up for another 3 movies. And with that said, I mean, the other, you know, I thought she was worried she might get spoiled. The 3 Spider-Men interacting was phenomenal. Tom Holland working with the other dimensional villains, phenomenal. Post-credit scenes, phenomenal. Yeah, I mean, it's just a long movie. It's a lot to take in. I mean, you get sitting for 2:30. That's a grind. But Spider-Man, Marvel, they grinded this one out. The action sequences were phenomenal. You get the gymnastics of a Spider-Man fight scene, but you mix in Doctor Strange and the dimension switching and everything, and you really got a recipe for success. Can't wait to rewatch it, but yeah, what a film. What a great feeling walking out. The multiverse is set, folks. Let's go. Folks, welcome back. It's not Blockbuster. It's not Netflix. It's not Hulu. It's WhaT's, TrainWreck, WaTching, and we are breaking down Spider-Man No Way Home, the latest installment in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Full-fledged, back in theaters. It's a full experience for this holiday season, and we've got the full experience ready for you here to break down the film that many are calling potentially the film of the year, and for sure a top film in the MCU. But before we get too far into that, let's get our panel in here. We got the Majka Man, Jake, Micah. We have got Casali Files, Joe Casali, Mr. Hollywood, and of course joining us from previous appearances on Wrestling with Emotion, we got Parthum, Mike Parthum. How are we doing, crew? How are we feeling about this blockbuster that we all have digested in the last 48 hours?
I have just one word for you all, gentlemen. Dude.
Oh my God. I don't even know. Like, I just got out of the movie an hour ago, and I don't know what to do with myself. This was an experience like no other. I mean, God, even if you're a fan of Spider-Man all the way back from 2002, Sam Raimi, there is something for everybody here. I don't even want to say this should have been called Spider-Man Endgame, but they called it No Way Home. And no way did I expect it to blow the doors off the roof, but holy wow, this was an experience like no other. I'm so happy cinema is back because movies like this can still exist. I thought it would be a long time until we would get something like this to bring in the crowds and to get people talking and excited about movies again. But I'm so happy I was wrong, because this is it. This is what going to the theaters is supposed to be for. Oh, I can't wait to talk about this movie. Oh my God, I loved it so much.
Yeah, bro. I wanted to just like sit like 1,000-yard stare, just like to ponder everything I could for like I could have sat in that movie theater all night long if I really like was thinking about it. Like it was just, there's a lot to take in, but everything, like I said, it met my expectations and more, like gave me more than I was anticipating in a lot of ways. Yeah, I can't wait to get into it. So yeah, I'm excited. Haven't been this excited about a What's Trainwreck watching, man. Anything. I mean, this Spidey, this is a different animal. So this is gonna be fun.
Marvel really is over delivering with these collabs. And before we get too deep into the details here, but in Endgame, you're told you're going to see them all on screen together. It's still overwhelming to see. You're told in this movie, spoiler alert, and again, spoiler ahead here on What's Trainwreck Watching with our No Way Home recap. You see all the Spider-Man on the screen. You see all the villains on screen. It's like you're still overwhelmed by all the interactions and all the things that can happen to them. So let's get into it. You obviously saw our reaction walking out of the theater, so let's get into the start of it, gents. We get into the first act, and things are chaos for Peter Parker, whether it's the Stark conundrum and the conspiracy around Mysterio. But it was interesting to see because typically, besides Endgame, besides Captain America Civil War, we don't really see the Avengers dealing with the fallout of previous films too much. But obviously, with Mysterio revealing Peter Parker, seeing that he is kind of, saying that he was guilty of these, crimes and things like that, seemed like they had no choice but to follow up on it and kind of bring it to a close and show the falling action from that Casali in this first act.
Yeah. This movie literally started right after Far From Home. Like it was a great continuation. I mean, that's kind of what I expected it to be with the post-credit scene of Far From Home. I mean, sitting in the theater, seeing J. Jonah Jameson on screen and Peter Parker's Spider-Man. I mean, right off the bat, I was excited, when I first saw that movie back in 2019 or whenever it came out. And because, again, it started us fresh, completely new, where now we live in a world where people know who Spider-Man is. Spider-Man, Peter Parker. That's never been done in cinema before. So right off the bat, it took us to a different whole direction. And just as it kind of played out, he was just he witnessed it with MJ. He's trying to fly through. He's telling everybody like, "What do I do? What do I do?" Because this is a kid too. Like he's just so like, not only out of everything he's been through. He literally, went to space for us. He did everything he could. He's the little guy in a big world. And then all of a sudden he's put on the spot with people thinking that he's a murderer. He's never been in this situation before where he's just, again, trying to do the right thing. But now people are blaming him for stuff that he knows that what happened was with Mysterio. He knew that Mysterio was a bad guy. But just like right off the bat, he's in this new world where it's just very jogging. And I think it flowed perfectly. I think, again, it flowed perfectly from the ending of Far From Home. And it just brought us to a different side of Peter Parker and Spider-Man that we haven't seen. And that's exactly what this movie needed. Because, I mean, this whole movie is something we've never seen before. And it shows, and it works. It works.
Well, I was almost expecting Peter to kind of go on the run there for a second. Like go on the lam or something, being a fugitive, like hiding out in motels or somewhere. But despite how his world got turned upside down, it was relatively normal. He had to move to another condo, and he could still walk places without kind of sort of being mugged. But still, the implications for him and his friends were, things were never going to be the same. And half the world likes him and half the world hates him, kind of like with some of the things we deal with nowadays in the real world, where it's just, people on both sides, and it's very, what do you say? Not bipolar, it's very divided.
Yes,
in
sides. Yep, gotcha.
Yeah.
And what I kept thinking about in, the production sense was, this movie, the way it was made, almost didn't get made because after Far From Home, the reports came out that Sony and Marvel had a parting of the ways, and thank goodness for Tom Holland in more ways than one, because he got on the blower with some higher up executive and said, "Hey, we got to keep this together for at least a movie or two more." So it's interesting to think about what the movie would look like had Sony gone on their own and sort of split away from the MCU already. And there's implications of that, and we'll get to that later on as we see how the movie concludes. But I mean, Peter had to deal with a new reality, and he seemed to be relatively keeping it together for the time being. But yeah, it's I mean, this is something we've never dealt with for Spider-Man movies before. We've seen in comics with the Civil War story in that universe, but never Peter coming out. And it was going to be interesting to see if Peter was just sort of going to blend into the new Avengers and just have his identity revealed and just be kind of like Iron Man and Captain America, where everybody knows who he is, and he's just got to find a new way to deal with that.
For sure. Yeah, and I think you mentioned a bunch of stories that they pulled from a lot of different stories. Now we can get into those more and everything with the way that they're going with Spider-Man. But this is the way that like the first act setting it up and just the beginning and everything. I was in shock, just like you said, that they didn't go somewhere, like that he was just able to like walk into high. Betty Brant put it perfectly though. She was like, he's the most popular person in the world, and now he's got to conquer college admissions or whatever.
Yeah,
and they just wanted to keep it. They wanted to keep it like focused on that, and it was great. But I was like, there's no way this kid would be like, how is he walking into a high school right now?
No self-respecting administration would have that circus going on out in front of the school.
And then they got a gym teacher who's telling the kid he's a murderer straight to his face.
Yeah, like he's bringing Hannibal Buress as conspiracy. He's hilarious.
Mysterio was right. Mysterio was right. This is a horrible environment for this kid to be walking into. Education system in Midtown High, it's a little bit questionable, but it was awesome to just see like them kind of explore Ned, MJ, and Peter fully, especially in this first act. They really took the time more than even the last two movies to just like show how special their relationship was, and obviously it was going to set up for the huge impact of what was going to happen the rest of the movie. But I really enjoyed that time they kind of spent with it, and just them sticking by his side through the fucking chaos that he had to deal with, which was nuts. But can we get to the big reveal that we got in the first act, in the first 5 minutes? Our boy,
he really did come out of nowhere. It was great to see. So you've been mentioning, I'll let you bring it in.
Oh, all right. We as we had our if you haven't watched Hawkeye episode 5, spoilers too, we were talking the other day and we saw our boy Kingpin show up, and we were like, all right, well, let's roll in here. Let's keep it rolling. And our boy Matt Murdock, Daredevil, showing up in the first scene. He needed a good lawyer. He's a pretty good lawyer. I don't know if lawyering skills has any. I don't know if you need reaction time.
Yeah, that was a little over the top.
A little bit, but it was just a great moment to see. We'll get into as we go later, like where the MCU is going. I think this could have been a bigger reveal than it was in this moment, but just the fact to see those two characters, Peter Parker and Matt Murdock, the history they've had in Marvel Comics together on the screen together, was a moment that fans have been asking for since 2002, since the first two movies came out.
Yeah,
I mean,
just even seeing him. I mean, I love the Netflix stuff. I mean, some more than others. And I've said that, in our previous episode of Hawkeye with Kingpin. And, you kind of just like, once they showed Kingpin, that's why it kind of was perfect that they did the Hawkeye episode before this. Not that it was a big like tease, but you kind of be like, all right, now they got the toys on the chest. Because again, like with the Sony acquisition, Netflix was also having a tough time with the rights situation. The producers on the Netflix shows and Feige, they didn't really get along that much. So once that kind of got in the air, because even once all the shows got canceled, people were like, wait a minute, like, is this going to happen? Yeah. Are they going to actually finally pop up in the movies? So to just see that, like, yeah, it was great. It was so cool that they have so many more toys in the chest. And I mean, what a way to reintroduce the character in like a kind of monotone way. It's not like we saw him like in the cowl or anything, but it was just him sitting there knowing that he lives in this world. And again, it put a smile on my face because of those 3 seasons of Daredevil.
Mm-hmm.
Charlie Cox plays a wonderful Daredevil, on that show. So, and it brings us to more possibilities like the Punisher and all this stuff. So it's very exciting. And not only just for just this movie, because listen, this is, again, like I said, this is the end game of Spider-Man movies. So they're just playing around and just getting this out in the way. But we know a new trilogy's coming. There's so many more room for storytelling and whatnot. So it's just exciting to say like, hey, you know what? I can do this. I can just, even if it's just a second. And that's what Marvel has done perfectly. They love how to play, again, with the tools in the chat. They love how to put these characters in different ways we've experienced with the shows where, they kind of, they twist around some backstories here and there. But, they have, everything on the board. I'm sure Feige has a huge whiteboard somewhere and he's just writing down everything and every different possibility and to figure out what works best and what doesn't. But this was just, again, it was great. Like, and it was a nice tease for what's to come, because this was just like, oh, you thought that was great. Charlie Cox is coming. Come on. You ain't seen nothing yet. So again, just so exciting.
That was simply an appetizer. Yeah, and to sum up the first act, I think it was good because let's face it, for these first 2 films, Homecoming was kind of him reacting to being in the Avengers and still being a high schooler. Far From Home was kind of him trying to balance being an Avenger and being a kid at the same time, obviously. And this was finally a film where those 2 worlds were completely combined. He has to embrace that he's Spider-Man. Absolutely. There are the risks of people knowing and everything like that. And we found that out with Bugles. And like we said, sometimes you just have to focus on getting into MIT. Not everything needs to be an Avengers level threat. But obviously, they fail that Avengers level threat. They do not get into MIT because of the public controversy, the court of public opinion, as our friend Matt Murdock, mentioned, obviously. But that brings on Doctor Strange. And so Peter walks right over there. He's like checking his phone on the map for where like Doctor Strange is at. Walks in pretty much unannounced, a little bit ridiculous. Like you would think there would be some corresponding, going on between Avengers here via email or something like that. But walks in, and obviously, there was some speculation in the trailer if there was, a Mephisto involved or if there was something that goes on.
Mephisto's everywhere. Remember that.
But Mephisto is always amongst us.
He's everywhere.
But truly, just ends up being a situation where Doctor Strange is unleashing a spell of the cosmos, and Peter Parker is busy being like a 17 to 18-year-old kid as he's portrayed. And all of a sudden saying things that he's got the rings going and everything. What did you guys think of this sequence? And then ultimately, the build up to the bridge, to the highway bridge scene.
Yeah, again, it just, you could look at it as, okay, well, what big adult mentor can we get next in this movie? Because the first was Iron Man and Homecoming. Second was for a bit, it was Mysterio, Jake Gyllenhaal until he turned, and now Doctor Strange. But, again, they play with the toys and all that stuff. It was just exciting, even though Spider-Man fought, Ebony Maw and everybody on the street, in the beginning of Infinity War. So I'm sure he would know where he's going. But that aside, of course, it was just exciting. It was just exciting for him to go in. And this was also like, we went in and there was like snow all over the place. And it was like, what's going on? Wong was like getting ready to leave and, and all that stuff. So it was just kind of like, it was, again, Peter Parker.
Hey. That's Sorcerer Supreme Wong to you.
That's right. No, Wong's the best. But Parker, he's just a kid. He's just like, okay, how can I fix this? Because again, he knows, oh, Doctor Strange, he's the wizard. He doesn't know like this, severity of what Doctor Strange deals with.
No,
obviously we know more for from the movie and from what he was capable of in Infinity War. But he's just a kid. He just thinks, okay, he could just zap it away and then everything will be fine. So even when Doctor Strange was like, all right, I'll help you. And Sorcerer Supreme Wong told him, no, don't do that. You can't do this. Please don't do this. And of course, Stephen Strange, he's just like, okay, I'm going to do it anyway. Cause I'm Stephen Strange. Even the whole thing that I loved where he kept calling him Mr. and Sir, and he's like, come on, we saved the universe together. You can call me by my first name. And
and that kept going back and forth depending on whether he was in the doghouse or not.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it was just, it was just kind of, again, he's a kid, this is a whole new world in front of him, regardless of now he's dealing with this whole threat of everybody knows who he is. So, the one thing he could think of is going to see, Doctor Strange. And obviously that was kind of a silly choice because, he's doing the spell and everything. And he just keeps interrupting and he's like, stop talking. And then, we get our movie. So thank you for doing that, Peter Parker, obviously.
All I gotta say is it was a little weird that, like, Strange was treating the spell like bringing in the groceries and closing the garage door and, like, bringing in the dog versus, like, an interdimensional spell that could have some repercussions. Because you always see Strange be so responsible. I guess this was a little bit of his cocky side. Let's face it, at the end of the day, Stephen Strange was born out of a little cockiness to get to where he's at right now.
Very true.
So maybe seeing a little bit of flash of that. But yeah, again, and then that follows through, we'll talk about the other side of this, but when he's dismissing him, he basically, like, realizes he was listening to a kid who did no due diligence, and it kind of, like, makes Strange look like an idiot. But that's the balance of having a child in the Avengers or a 17-year-old in the Avengers. So very interesting. But yeah, great interaction, obviously, with them.
If he still had the time stone, he knew the implications of messing with the timeline. If he still had the stone, he wouldn't have done it anyway. But he knows magic, and he knows how to manipulate that as it is. But for those of you who are on YouTube and watch the How I Should Have Ended It videos, I can just see their video right now where Strange tells him, okay, give me a list of all the people who you want to remember, and I'll just make one spell for all those people instead of having to invent new rings for each person that Peter subsequently thinks of in the moment.
He was adding rings like it was pizza toppings. Like, anchovies, like pepperonis. Like, it was absurd.
Well, again, he didn't think this through. He just came in, as a kid would, to be like,
he didn't give it an hour, bro.
I blame Doctor Strange. This is a situation, you know what I mean, though? Like,
this is child endangerment. This is child endangerment.
This is like when you blame the babysitter, not like the baby. Obviously, the baby was going to want to do a spell and do all kinds of adjustments the last second.
Pete didn't even give it. He didn't even give it like 20 minutes. He was like, I'm going right to the wizard. He's like, this is the only possible explanation for this is we're going to go to the wizard. So, I don't know. It was just chaos. Absolute chaos. I think Strange a little bit, though, was just thinking it's Wong's Sorcerer Supreme. Like, he's the one that's going to get in trouble, not me. Like, this is Wong. This is really Wong told me I could do it. So he can help me clean it up, even though he said
he did not tell me.
It's Wong's problem.
It's always going back to Wong.
I blame Wong.
And as we roll on here on What's Trainwreck Watching, of course, sponsored by Picasso's Pizza, we got to pay the bills.
Hey, Picasso's freestyle. Let's do it. Hey, eating a couple wings with a couple kings. They're my favorite things. Hey. That's all I got. I'm not a good freestyle rapper. Wait, hold on. Wait for a second.
So then, obviously, after we're dismissed by Doctor Strange, Peter goes onto the throughway and is, like, looking into cars for the MIT lady. Probably the least believable thing in the Marvel Universe since time travel, if I had to say so myself. But he ends up finding her, and then all of a sudden, while he's talking with her, we get the reemergence of these classic Spider-Man characters, beginning with Alfred Molina as Doc Ock. What an appearance. How electric. I felt like everything that Molina did on this was a amazing testimonial to the character that was in Spider-Man 2, but also showed the way that it would potentially evolve. Casale, what did you think of this sequence on the, what would you call it again here? Like the highway bridge, the throughway, like
the bridge scene that was always in the trailers.
Yeah. It was in the trailer.
No way off this bridge. No, let me tell you something. This is where the movie, the beginning was great and it was great setup and everything. I didn't think, a lot of people were saying it was clunky and whatnot. I didn't think so. I thought it flowed naturally, but this is really where the movie starts. And what a way to start it with Alfred Molina. My history of Spider-Man will always owe to those Sam Raimi films. Tobey Maguire is my Spider-Man. I love everything about those movies, and Spider-Man 2 is just it's a classic in my point. So already knowing, because we knew in the trailers that they were showing up and everything, so knowing that Molina was going to be back, it was just so exciting to see that, and so deserving, because obviously you're thinking, okay, well, they keep rebooting these movies and everything, so who's going to don the arms, who's going to do it? But they figured out a way to be like, no one can do it. Alfred Molina can do it, and every time you think of Doc Ock, you always think of him. So to see him on the screen was that's just where I just started grinning from ear to ear, and I don't think I stopped until the movie ended, because just seeing him and coming on the bridge and everything, and his interactions with this version of Peter Parker, the one we've grown with these movies. It was just so exciting, because it was just great to see that action again, and to see it reminded me of, like, I wouldn't go as far along as the train sequence in Spider-Man 2, because that one will always be a testament to how beautiful that movie is. But, again, kind of like an ode to it. And that's what this movie really is. It's paying way, giving thanks to what come before, it's just, and to see that, and Doc Ock come back and what he's thinking, like, oh, this isn't it. Doc Ock put his arm on the tech, the nanotech suit, and it kind of goes on his arms, and he's like, what's this? It was just so exciting to see this, and it's funny, like,
that was
even
awesome.
though
Awesome moment. It just showed like how the two, in different eras were kind of combining in my eyes. And there were about 15 other moments like that in the rest of the movie.
Yeah. Like, even though it was like the old toys, it was just, it brought something new and different to the table. And again, and I think it worked too, because going into this movie, the one thing I always just kept thinking of, I'm like, okay, you gave it to me in the trailers. I like the plot, but how are you going to bring this together? How are you going to, really explain how these are from the movies? Because, I mean, we've grown, we've watched these shows, we've met variants of things, and so in our heads, like, okay, is this really a multiverse, or just variants of things and whatnot? Or is it actually really from Spider-Man 2? The great thing about this movie is, even though it's paying off what's come before with Far From Home, it's kind of paying off what's came before back in 2006 when Spider-Man 2 came out.
Oh, yeah.
And all of those movies that we've grown up with and fell in love with this character. And that's what was done beautifully in this movie. And with Doc Ock, I mean, it was great. They were fighting. And he was just like saying, like, wow, this is a different kind of Spider-Man. Maybe he just upgraded his suit, until he finally realized, wait a minute, you're not Peter Parker. It was just a beautiful scene. And to start off with this, because he kind of redeemed himself at the end of Spider-Man 2. He realized his errors. He realized that he can't contain the power of the sun. It's going to destroy the city. So he brought it down, and Spider-Man was able to go off with MJ, and that was it. So to see this kind of different side, where it seems like he was taken out of that movie right before his sacrifice, it was a beautiful way to start it. And it really kind of paved way to what what has come, with everything.
It was a clever way to do it, where some of the villains, were just defeated and others were sort of redeemed. So you didn't know how that dynamic was going to work. So now the implication that they all got pulled in basically just before they met their demise or their end kept them all in that villain mode, so to speak, where they didn't get the big speech or the sacrifice themselves moment, or get sacrificed by accident moment. So they were all the villains to start with. And then for Spidey and Doctor Strange to find a way to contain them and sort of control them was a great way to get that interaction dynamic going, where they're sort of trading notes with each other. Wait, aren't you dead? Wait, aren't you supposed to look different? And so to speak. And that was really fun to see, them basically pointing at each other like certain other people would later on. But it's like all the toys come together at one time.
Yeah, that was some of the most. I mean, there was, like you said, 15 other moments in this movie that it happened, but those down in the Wizard's dungeon. Oh my god! Like,
there's really no easy way to put it. There's no sugarcoating when you're in the Wizard's dungeon.
No sugarcoating at all. But I honestly wish that, like, I'm I'm going back to what you mentioned about the trailers, Casali. I wanted them to go into this movie. I think I said this way back in some episode I told you guys. I don't want a trailer telling us anything. Like, we knew all the rumors already that it was going to be a bunch of spiders and it was going to be a bunch of villains. Like, it would have just, imagine if we didn't see any villains in the trailers at all. Like, they gave us like nothing. Like, it was the first beginning of the movie. Maybe you show, I don't know there was no new villain, I guess, introduced at all. So that would have been part of the issue. There's really no action.
That's the only disadvantage they put themselves at, was the only villain they could have pretended was that the multiverse was breaking, and the implication would have been a famous example where they did this, and this won't be the last time I mention this movie. Star Trek Into Darkness, they never really fully announced that Benedict Cumberbatch was Khan. It was just that Star Trek was going on new missions and things like that. It would have just been so tough. And even in the last Spider-Man movie, Mysterio wasn't really,
well, he was Mysterio. We just didn't know what side he was on.
Yeah, he wasn't promoted as a villain. Yeah,
and they're showing all the water monster and shit like that.
Yeah,
I
think you're right. It would have been incredible if, like, 40 minutes in, Molina just comes out of nowhere. And you're like, holy shit!
What the
that would have been.
I think I remember something. I think I read an article or something where they actually did comment on what you said, and in the beginning they felt that they wanted to maybe try and pivot where it was Spider-Man versus Doctor Strange, and that was what they were gonna rely on the promotional material. And I mean, rightfully so. That probably would have worked a lot better than this, even though it was still nice to kind of get us in there.
Box office records though going.
I mean,
you
needed the carrot to get people back in the theaters, especially after so long.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe that's the pivot, is they decide they're like, nah, we just need as many tickets ahead of time, like regardless of what people think of this movie, let's just get it sold.
Because you're getting in not only MCU audiences, you're getting in people that grew up with these movies, the Raimi movies, the Webb movies, everything. So obviously they delivered.
Iconic beyond belief for a number.
Absolutely,
was like the highest grossing film ever when it came out, until it got supplanted by Vincent Chase's Aquaman. But yes, would have been easy. Would have been easy to promote this movie as Spider-Man Doctor Strange, and the reason being is that they end up facing off. So obviously, Peter Parker's Spider-Man kind of being a wholesome, everyone kind of can be saved character, comes up with the concept that, these guys can kind of be rehabilitated. We can figure out ways to fix them. We can figure out ways to send them back home in a positive way. And instead you have Doctor Strange saying, no, their only fate is to be defeated by Peter Parker. And that's what leads to our first fight scene is, where would you put this in? What, like the early, middle, second act, or early second act?
Yeah.
I think so.
Early second act. Yeah.
Amazing. Sorry, go ahead.
No, this is by now Norman is already in the Wizard's dungeon, right? And this is
because he also was on the bridge as well.
And by the way, we got to talk about, because we talk about the pacing of this movie for 2.5 hours or 2 and change or whatever it is, and being able to be on the bridge right as Green Goblin is attacking and kind of screen wipe to the Wizard's dungeon was kind of a huge part of that pacing. That it wasn't just villain spam. It wasn't just here's Doc Ock, here's Green Goblin.
Very well.
It added to the fact that it was really building action.
Yeah.
So, the Wizard's dungeon played a huge role. Who would have thought we would have been saying that No Way Home? But so we got this Spider-Man versus Doctor Strange battle. Casali, thoughts on the cinematography of it all? Did it live up to the hype? Facing off. I don't know if they were firing kill shots. They were trying to more trap each other, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, because once he had, because obviously not only we met Doc Ock on the bridge, we also met Goblin on the bridge, and that was a little like, wait, who is that? Is that a Goblin? What is that? And there he was able to get them both back to the dungeon. He came up with the plan where, like, okay, this is what we got to do. This is this device. Well, first you got to rally up all these villains, and then this is the device that'll send them home and back to their demise. And our boy Peter Parker was like, no, I want to do the right thing. I don't want to just send them to their deaths. I want to give them a chance and explain themselves. And and Doc obviously was like, no, you can't. That'll screw up the multiverse. There's no other way. So then it kind of went into like a little disagreement, and then a catch football all the way through the mirror dimension, which I mean, every time they do this on screen, even from the original Doctor Strange, it is just beautiful cinematography from ear. Like it's so insane what they were able to do. The first time I ever saw Doctor Strange and they pulled this off, I felt like I was watching Inception again. And it it really
I was gonna say, where's
so
the cameo
beautiful
from Leo DiCaprio?
Yeah, so it was just so such a great way to kind of like pull it off, and it also brought something different to the table for a Spider-Man movie because again, he's just a kid. He doesn't know what the hell's going on and all this like stuff. I mean, he had some taste of it, when he was on Titan and Infinity War, but this was just such an inventive way. And I mean, how that Doctor Strange really like. He doesn't pull punches. He knows like at every angle, like how to stop something because he is, he just knows he knows how to get the job done. So, right off the bat, it was just exciting to like see this and kind of like, get us moving to the next. I really enjoyed that scene a lot.
To use a wrestling term, Doctor Strange really put over Spider-Man because Doctor Strange, with all his power and magic and portals and whatnot, you might think he's nigh unstoppable. And for Peter Parker to just use his knowledge and math, so to speak, to defeat magic, that was a trip, I would say.
Yeah.
This movie did a really good job of showing how smart Peter Parker is, because Peter Parker is supposed to be like one of the smartest people in the Marvel universe. And I mean, he's been obviously been highly regarded. He was on like the team and everything in Far From Home, Homecoming. But this was a different level, like outsmarting Doctor Strange like that. Like it was.
I mean, the whole like geometry, like getting the webs. Yeah, that was really cool.
Calculations on the fly to get that radius of pi and shit. And he even comes out of it just like Parthum said, and he tells Ned and MJ, he's like, "I fought Doctor Strange and I think I beat him," or like something like that.
He was so hyped up. But I do want to go back because Sally, you mentioned earlier about it was Peter. It was more, and this is I think an important point in this whole movie is it wasn't Peter was not going to give them the chance right away. He was like, "I'll just get these guys out of here," and it was May that convinced him. May convinced him because Norman was on his shit right away. Like whether he was really on it in that moment.
Did he just get Oscorp?
He got snapped.
No, but while Mike has recanted, it was. Yeah,
that's true.
It was Norman being a relative, like Norman out of everybody, even though he was acting like a little bit of a wackadoo, was actually the most human of them all, right?
Well, he had the most split personality because he still had his human side, and his human side was talking to his goblin side even back in the original movie. Yeah, and we got a little bit of that to start with, and then he kind of has his Last Jedi moment where he smashes his own mask, and you think, okay, he's conquered his dark side, but we know better. And whether that was his human side coming through or whether his dark side was sort of lying in wait was a pretty good dynamic.
That is hysterical, his Last Jedi moment. As Peter also has the Emperor with the lightning. We'll get into that in a little bit. But great Doctor Strange battle. And this leads to, a talking point. I guess we have it on here. I put on here. Spidey rehab. So we got the non-Fantastic Four of Electro, Sandman, Doc Ock, Green Goblin, and Lizard. So actually Fantastic Five. And we're looking to rehab all of them. And again, this is another chance to showcase Peter Parker. Again, I don't think that the MCU loves to kind of remind everybody that all of these guys are basically smart scientists for the most part, because it kind of would just get a little overwhelming. Yeah. But like you said, it was the perfect opportunity without doing that to showcase, Peter being a smart guy. I mean, I thought the scenes, especially when working with Norman Osborn, were really good. It showed us what could have been with like Tobey Maguire and Willem Dafoe in that role. And by the way, Willem Dafoe, he was acting the shit out of it in 2002 when he was doing it. But I think that he actually amped it up for this one with the multiple personalities. Yeah. With everything like that, and just it was really like and someone wrote this down. This wasn't my original take, but on Reddit. But I guess there's there's different versions of the Goblin costume, and kind of having him in the non-mask one was a good decision for sure.
It was the old school hood and everything, but the pure green face.
And so I love in Spidey rehab. My favorite thing is that you know, you got Jamie Foxx, who's like just like feels great about himself and looks at all the potential. He thinks he's on fleek. The lizard guy, who's just kind of like, you know, he was kind of the lamest to me. I'm not gonna lie, like if I'm picking him, but
he was lame in Amazing Spider-Man as well.
You had Alfred Molina, aka Doc Ock. Just a miserable fuck tied to these tentacles, like as he couldn't do anything. And then you get the obvious rehab of him, and he was he the first one to get
yeah, he got the
and then he saw, you know, he was kind of reintroduced to the world and everything. It was just a great sequence. And Spidey rehab, I really thought was awesome, even though it kind of ended up being the teetering point towards the third act and the rest of the film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I thought it was a great kind of way to kind of explain what their side was, what they went through already with Spider-Man. Their kind of like realization that you're not Andrew Garfield, you're not Toby, this is a new version that we've never faced before. And I think, to me, this kind of felt like a great way to, you know, reintroduce them, kind of get us on the ball rolling. Like, not only this was a sequel to you know, Far From Home, but this kind of felt like a sequel to the original movies, you know, kind of like showing their story, you know, progressing it into this film, which I thought was just, I mean, amazing in itself. But it kind of showed them in a way where it trusted the audience. I mean, there was a little bit where they kind of had to explain. I mean, of course, it's a movie and you got to know your audience, but it didn't feel like it was, oh, this is the lizard. This is what happened to him. This is what he looks like. Oh, this is Doc Ock. He used these to do it felt,
even with the Matt Murdock, if you're not like super into the universe, like if you were a casual Spider-Man fan just seeing that because you saw like the 2002 and the 2010 guys were going to be in it, you probably missed out on the Murdock reference. I'm not going to lie. But it was awesome that they did it with confidence, right? Which is what you're saying. They didn't have to overexpose everything. Absolutely. Like in bad storytelling, you always see that you get like expose with talking or explaining why
this is Katana. She has my back.
The sword captures the souls of her victims. You're so right. It's the perfect example. But yeah, no, it just made. I mean, it goes back to the pacing. The whole MCU has really just earned so much legitimacy because it's long-form storytelling, everything being connected, everything feeling like it's important. And again, as we head into the second half of this movie, without just, and I'll probably say this again twice, or second half of this recap, like just what a, you know, rebuild they've had so quickly after it felt like kind of the kitchen cabinet might be a little bare after Endgame. You know, how are you going to follow up Thanos as like legitimate threats? But it feels like they have so much on the table now to do so. And it obviously started with this Spidey rehab and this, you know, this movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it just, again, too, and you kind of mentioned it before. I feel like, because, you know, we know from, you know, watching Amazing Spider-Man 2 that Sony was kind of like, I wouldn't even say they were out of ideas, but they really wanted to like push their version, because that movie came out around the same time, you know, the Avengers came out and that story was already built. So Sony was kind of competing. Marvel didn't have Spider-Man yet, so they couldn't really do so. So, you know, at the end of Amazing Spider-Man 2, it kind of seemed like not only they put so many villains in, you know, at the very end with Goblin, Electro, and all that stuff, but then it was like the setup to the Sinister Six. And it was like, okay, now it's just like, what are you doing? Like, this is just like you're setting up for, I mean, at first I was like for nothing, but then it kind of, you know, this kind of felt like a sequel to that. But this I think this was an interesting way to do it. An interesting way to, you know, obviously we know like the Sinister Six, like that's what, you know, his, you know, many villains, that's what Spider-Man always has. But this is kind of a way to bring in those characters to the world. But, you know, it's the ones we grew up loving and the ones we grew up with, and we know and we feel, we understand their motivation. We understand why they're here. So it was just kind of like a beautiful way to do it. And all the way, like I tapped on, you know, Alfred Molina, you brought it up, William Dafoe, him coming back. He was outstanding in this movie. I mean, all the way from, you know, how he portrayed, you know, Green Goblin in Spider-Man. You know, he was cast. He really, like, if I remember correctly, he really wanted to do William, you know, Green Goblin and all that stuff because he just felt like he looked like the character and he just really liked that kind of vibe to it. And I think when they were doing early, like pre-production, that was supposed to be like his general look, where it was just supposed to be like a more like aesthetic feel to it, and then it kind of got morphed into the biker suit just to get like, you know, whether it was, you know, merchandise rights or you know, who knows at that point what was going on in their heads in 2002, but to have that kind of feel to it, because when they were going and getting into this universe in this movie, they were kind of adjusting to it, you know, like Doc Ock got the you know, nanotech from Spider-Man. Electro kind of changed up his look. He wasn't the blue guy, thank God, from Amazing Spider-Man 2.
No, he looked great. He looked great.
And by the way, it wasn't the first or last time they did that, but mentioning that like his look was different and that his teeth were together, which were funny things that were like critiqued about that Spider-Man movie, and them just pointing them out on screen. Again, a benefit that Marvel gets to do because they've developed so much legitimacy with their audience.
Absolutely. So it worked.
One note on William Dafoe, I heard that he agreed to do this movie with the condition that he did his own stunts. And at 66, that man is a badass.
Man. And you with bringing back wrestling in there, he showed off in this scene a nasty power bomb and one of the best spine busters I've ever seen in my life. So man was out here doing this.
Oh yeah, that whole sequence in the condo was just like one big one-on-one match.
I am shocked that was Dafoe.
That was his one thing. He wanted to show
incredible.
He wanted to display the proper aggression. He was like, I need to do this properly. I think Sally made a great point though earlier about this scene was the Goblin scene for me, what it turned into, obviously. And you guys, there was that one moment. I can't wait to go watch this movie back, because there's the one moment when he's in the lab where the camera's panning over and you just see the look he has on his face and you're like, oh, it's gone. Like you're immediately like, you know that he's slipped and he is gone. And
he's
the Spidey
tingle, right? Where the camera's kind of in his face as he's looking around and trying to figure out what's going on.
And that's the best Spidey sense I've ever seen in a movie, and of all these movies, like the way they portrayed that, just the intenseness that he got for that. And then the whole conversation that him and not Norman anymore, it was full Goblin. And you said earlier, like the facial, like his face, like he had such great facial expressions and everything. It was like that was a very creepy Goblin, and it was really all you could ask for from a Goblin character in a movie. Like it was, and that's why they brought him back. It was so great. I just really loved that little part from when you could see his face, and then Peter walking through having the Spidey sense, and then Norman's interaction with May too, because I mean they have history, especially that Norman in Spider-Man 1 obviously interacts with May, knows that universe May, and they didn't get along either. Like they didn't like bad holiday dinner. I mean, it went very bad with them. Didn't like each other.
Didn't get slapped this time.
Exactly, didn't get slapped. And so he knew to go to somewhere deep down, either whether it was Goblin or Norman in that feast scene. I still think it was Goblin just pulling the long con, but just knew of May. And I think that was the important dynamic to go through, because he knew of that and knew that May would take him in and do whatever, and then he would be able to get whatever upper hand he needed to get on Peter there.
If we didn't get any Goblin action in this movie, if we just got William Dafoe as Goblin, just talking and mocking and, playing these mind games with Peter in that voice that he does, I think that would have been enough for me.
For sure.
Absolutely.
There's no doubt Dafoe was stunting in this bad boy. And that's when we get to kind of some chaos in the end of the second act here. The Bugle. So we got J. Jonah Jameson. He gets his glow up from just a green screen in his mom's basement to he's got a big studio with all his organs. I think that was what they were trying to portray with that with those two cutscenes. But obviously he's trying to go get some footage of Spider-Man. Kind of rare to see J. Jonah do it himself, but I guess he's going Thanos. I'll do it myself. And then we obviously get Aunt May, and out of nowhere we get the great responsibility. I will say that when I watched this scene the first time, so she kind of gets battle-starred by an explosion, and she was still moving, and I'm like, how the hell is she still moving? She should have absolutely died. Mm-hmm. And then, again, I know we're here on What's TrainWreck WaTching. We're 45 minutes into
if you're at this
spoiler alert.
Come on,
Aunt May does not make it. This was a gut punch
hurt,
death.
Man.
This was a... Marissa Tomei, has been like a leather glove or whatever you want to say that's like comfortable or whatever in this series. She was a seamless fit as Aunt May. Great vibe with Tom Holland. And she gets, I call it battle starred because she kind of gets like explosion like up against the thing. She has her scene where she tells him great power comes great responsibility. And yeah, I mean, this was a gut punch, guys. How did you react when this all went down?
Yeah, it was, I mean, like all the way through, it really just, it was devastating. It was something, that we've kind of never seen before, even though we had, I mean, we've had those Uncle Ben moments in the previous, franchises, and those hit the same. This reminded me of, the Raimi Spider-Man with Uncle Ben, getting shot, and Toby having to go through that. So it was just such a gut punch, especially like the journey that Peter Parker has gone through so far, realizing how much he's lost and how much, all this stuff is going. He's in this new world. He's with his friends. He's in this new loving relationship with MJ and all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And, them trying to experience like what college is going to be like and like if they can get in and stuff like that. So he's already having all this stuff. And MJ has always been with him. We haven't seen Uncle Ben in this version of Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't like really got to know not really got to know, because obviously, if you know Spider-Man, his legacy. So, the way that they did it kind of like helped and made us be like, okay, we know that stuff. Let's just get on with the relationship. And what Marissa Tomei has done.
Marissa Tomei. George Costanza would be outraged. George Costanza would be outraged. Marissa Tomei. But no, I had to really Mr. Hollywood.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Mr. Maniac. But it's just, what she's done since Civil War, and all the Spider-Man movies, she really brought it out and gave us a different side to Aunt May, something that has just been so loving. So going through this was just so heartbreaking. Because again, Peter, he's just a kid, this is just what, he's just trying to do the right thing. And this is, the greatest loss that he could ever have. And it's just real, like, it was so like, I was getting teary eyed in the movie. It was just so heartbreaking. Oh yeah. Dude, I was what was going on and the devastation of doing this, of bringing the Goblin in here, because, Goblin, he tried to do that to Toby's, with Aunt May and with MJ.
Yeah.
And he finally succeeded out. Devastating.
When you think about it, the OG Spider-Man kind of glosses over both those events ridiculously, because right after when Uncle Ben dies, he chases down the guy who was responsible, whatever. So it kind of just vibes away real quick. Yeah. And then when he explodes Aunt May's like house and she's like praying, it's like, where's Peter Parker? And it just cuts to a new scene, like completely.
Yeah. She's just screaming.
Everything was fine. Peter, your friend stopped by earlier, but that's just the genius, right? Is that, again, and I've said it before, I'll say it again, is that Marvel can kind of do things that are just completely out of the realm of sanity. If DC tried to do 1/3 the things that Marvel does, they would look like such idiots, because again, they haven't earned it with their audience. And they're working with the Suicide Squad. I thought that was a great step in the right direction. Maybe we'll get the new Batman movie, but you just see things again that Marvel's doing that DC can't. Just like, you know what, folks, often we see things from Picasso's that you just don't see from other pizza spots.
Hey, you big dumb idiot. Looks like you got yourself a saucy hand.
Yeah, I do.
Try yourself a Picasso boneless wing. Maybe next.
Right?
I feel like Tobey Maguire would love to be in Spider-Man 3. But folks, we are getting down. Go ahead, Parthum.
Let me just touch on Aunt May for a second. Because they didn't give us Uncle Ben at the beginning, because we'd already gotten that from the other two Spider-Men, and then they would sort of bring that dynamic in later on. But so because people were tired of seeing the origin story and seeing Uncle Ben die over and over again, like you said, they sort of built to it. They did things in reverse. Marvel did. They said, well, Spider-Man's story, so let's just get right into Spider-Man. And so it was almost like hearing the payoff to Avengers Assemble and Endgame, because they implied sort of those sorts of things, but now they just came out and just came right out with the line at such a critical moment. Yeah. And Aunt May became the stand-in for Uncle Ben. at the tail end of Spider-Man's journey, not necessarily the beginning.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think this scene, what you just said, is kind of perfect, because I think this whole original trilogy is really Peter Parker becoming like actually Spider-Man, like the Spider-Man we know from the other two movies, the Spider-Man from the comics. Like there's been all the criticism about Peter Parker being too much Stark tech in with the Avengers right away and everything. That wasn't exactly, he was Spider-Man, he had all the powers, everything. But once you get the great power comes great responsibility is the thing that makes him Spider-Man and every other thing. So if this is the first instance he's heard that, then, and obviously, like you said, in such a moment, like a climactic moment, like I was waiting for it. Like I knew it was coming. I was I got so excited, even though I knew terrible things were about to happen to see it. I was like, oh. I mean, you could just tell the way the conversation was going that she was gonna get around to it.
Because they even did it in the Amazing Spider-Man movies. They kind of paid homage to it. Was that ever said in the comics with great power, or was that?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Straight? Okay.
Oh yeah, that's in like the first. I think it's in the first issue, like Amazing Tales or whatever, his first appearance and everything. But the thing, so the interesting thing about the MCU, Peter too, is that the only thing we actually know about Ben Parker is he had on the one suitcase was Ben Parker's
in Far From Home
initials in Far From Home. That's the only reference we've had to Uncle Ben. Now they have that freshman year show that's about to come out that's supposed to explain before he turns into Spider-Man, right? So maybe there's
Spider action, right?
Maybe there's some Ben Parker in there, and then the parts that we missed between then and Civil War is when Uncle Ben dies and whatever else happens. But that's the only mention we've had. So I mean, who knows? Like, maybe this already happened before, and it was something that you
remember in Civil War, I think Peter had some offhand comment about this has been a tough year for Aunt May. I guess that was the allusion to losing Uncle Ben, but I guess it wasn't as traumatic as him being shot by someone that Peter could have stopped in the first place.
True. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, who's not stopping, and that is Ned. Even when Spider-Man's down in the dumps, even when he's at his lowest, Ned is looking for a way to help. So he's looking for Peter Parker through the strange portal. So if you want to make a Star Wars reference, this is kind of like, when Finn picks up the lightsaber in what is that?
No, it's more like Force when Rey uses the Force for the first time.
But I'm saying that it kind of doesn't belong with Ned. Like, so I don't know if Ned's actually going to get this power. So it's a little weird to see.
Well, I've got some Ned
is
theories,
opening up some portals. Oh, I'm sure there's all kinds of stuff coming from the
There's some Ned theories.
And this is how they do it. So it's a Doctor Strange accidental spell that gets all these villains into the universe, and it is a Ned accidental portal that introduces us to the characters, the greatest spoilers, kind of like the CM Punks to AEWs. We knew they would be in it. We just didn't know how it was going to be. And eventually, of course, they come to the portals. My theater wasn't going nuts. I was leading the way, but I was excited. I was fired up. It's a really big moment when even though you know something's going to happen, you're still excited by it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of like we knew it, we just had that feeling. We knew that was just going to be the case. I mean, I have to give an award to, because obviously the first Spider-Man that shows up is none other than Andrew Garfield Spider-Man from the Amazing Spider-Man movies. I have to give all the awards to Andrew Garfield of how much he has dove every single interview saying, I'm not in it. I'm not in it. I'm not in it. Like, man.
He was scared, bro. He couldn't handle the spoilers.
He understood the assignment, like that's just, I mean, again, we just knew, but like, he just didn't want anything to, and nobody, I mean, I don't remember anybody going up to Toby asking him if he was going to be in it. It was all, well, obviously Andrew was going through like promotion for his Tick Tick Boom movie that just came out on Netflix and whatnot. So it just, I mean, holy crap. So when you saw it, it was just like fulfilling. Like that's what it was. Yeah. It's just like you knew it was going to happen, but you just couldn't wait for it to happen. And it, it's always interesting how they always do it. It's the same way with Endgame. When I was getting ready to sit down for Endgame, all you're thinking about in your head the whole time is, okay, but how they're going to bring everybody back? How's everybody kind of come back? What's going to happen? Same thing with this. You're thinking in your head, I'm like, okay, well, how are both Spider-Mans going to get introduced, or is it going to, fit everything like that? I mean, this movie had a very hard time because it premiered a couple days ago, and I mean, as much as you love fandom, you also get the negative side where there's just so many people that trying to ruin for the rest of us and trying to take those moments away. The way I always look at spoilers is I just still want it to work. I don't care if I know that they're coming. I just still want it to work and feel earned. And it did because, again, like I said before, is this a different variant? Is this like, are they going to do a freaking, what was it? The Quicksilver and WandaVision, are they going to do that reveal? Which that I still can't get over the Ralph Boner. It's just like, because the whole time watching WandaVision, I'm like, that's come on, that's Quicksilver, that's from the X-Men, like they're gonna do it, and then they just do that, and I'm like, so, of course I had my doubts. I had I just want them to do it right, and this, it just worked. He was right from after Amazing Spider-Man 2. In a way, it kind of helped because I do enjoy that film, but it's not my favorite. But it's the same with how Endgame kind of paid off Thor: The Dark World. It's not my favorite, MCU movie, but the way that they interpreted it kind of just worked, and it kind of enhanced it. He was kind of dodging off, I was Spider-Man, I was fighting the Rhino, all that stuff. It kind of, it kind of made sense for how he was introduced. How it was just, it took place right after Amazing Spider-Man 2, and then some, and right off the bat, he was a broken Spider-Man. Because I mean, what we know from Amazing Spider-Man 2, I felt bad. I don't know if any of my friends, because I went with a whole bunch of people today, and I don't know if a lot of people, I was sitting next to my brother, and he's not as big of a movie fan as I am. So he is, but not as, so when we were sitting there, I know I want to cover myself just in case he's watching. He's gonna,
made himself into a corner, Mr. Hollywood.
I always do. But no, he, I don't know if he's ever seen that movie and realized what the stakes were, who Gwen died, all that stuff. But we do, us diehards know what that was like and live those moments. I was so happy I did a rewatch of all those movies before getting into this, because as much as it's a, in the MCU, it's a sequel to what's come before. So it was just great. It was really great to see him back. I mean, Andrew, I always felt he did a great job as Peter Parker. Spider-Man.
Oh, he's awesome.
He really did. And it just, when push comes to shove, it was kind of like what happened. He just got the bad deal because of Sony was just trying to do too much all at once. They were trying to compete with the MCU, with Avengers and whatnot. And it just kind of he got the salty side of it. It just didn't really work in his favor. I feel like those are fun movies and stuff like that, but it just a lot was shoved in and whatnot. They tried to make it darker because once The Dark Knight came out, everything had to be more adult and darker and dark tone and stuff. So it was great to see him back. It really was, because he really does. He loves the character too. So it's great to just see him back, and he was amazing in this movie. He was so good. It's just it was really cool to see that, this whole time he really was the wolf. That's it. He was in it, and it just, again, I clapped. I was so yeah. That was one of those moments where my friend next to me was like, okay, you okay, bro? What's going on? So yeah, no.
Wait, are you talking about the final battle scene that you were just talking about?
Well, no, just when he came back.
Oh, okay. I wanted to know when I got a Casale clap. Yeah, because I thought him coming out, crawling on the ceiling.
Casale clapped a lot during this movie. So
you got Tobey Maguire dressed up as a hipster youth pastor. It's all amazing. But and then
you didn't know if he was still hipster Tobey Maguire or back to regular Spidey Tobey Maguire for a second.
And then in a movie that's littered with hilarious moments, you have them working together in the science lab or whatnot. Pretty funny that it was just, I think it was the school science lab. It didn't look like anything elaborate. And he's talking, and Ned is talking with Tobey Maguire and Peter Parker. You ever have a best friend? And he's like, yeah, he tried to betray me and kill me, and he died in my arms. And he goes to Peter, I'm not going to try and kill him, betray him in my arms. Just so absurd. The bonding between them was
that's the fun of this, is the trading notes from all these different universes and all these different experiences and how similar and how different they are. And I think we got a lot more three-way spider interaction than I think we were going and expecting. Oh, yeah. I thought we were going to have those two coming in Endgame, through the portals and save the day at the very end with the final battle. But we got them all just interacting and just being buddy.
And the funny
go
thing
ahead.
is, sorry, Micah, is that if I could change the film, and I would change it, I would just throw in 15 more minutes of the alternate Spider universe.
I would take 3 hours. Give
Yeah.
me 3 hours with just more Spider, and I'm fucking living, dude. That'd be great.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the point I wanted to hit about the Spidey's coming back. Is first of all, first point was talking about Andrew Garfield, and it showcased one of the big themes they wanted to sell with this movie is how important the the Peter Parker and Mary Jane MJ relationship is. And you said that Andrew Garfield is the broken Spider-Man. Well, he was the one without the MJ. And that's really like one of the I think the selling points they did really hard, that with the difference, and even just showing Toby and Tom kind of were bonding a little bit more, and they were more alike. That was really the only similarity they kind of had together. So I thought that was an interesting note and kind of a good way to differentiate them too, because obviously it's three of the same dudes. You got to try to make it a little different between them. But the having them come back, not just in a spot duty, but really like being the emotional like weight for Tom Holland, like after he goes through it, everything we talked about with it just happening, couple scenes before with Aunt May. And how about that? This, like, after the Aunt May scene, I was like, how the fuck does this movie get back up? I'm like, dude, I'm like depressed. Like, this sucks. Dude, and then all of a sudden you see him, and then you see Andrew Garfield Spidey just standing there, and I'm like, that's it. I'm back in.
They did it. They pulled it off.
They figured it out, and then you knew it was going to be a fun ride the rest of the way. But I thought it was awesome that they kind of let them be that role for Peter MCU Tom Holland there. Absolutely. Because it was the only people who could really understand, right? Like, that's what he was saying. So it was a cool moment there at the top of the house.
Yeah, because they did it in a way too where it was just kind of like, again, yes, this is Tom Holland's story, but like, they know there's people in the audience, like, but like we, who grew up with Toby, who grew up with Andrew, like having Tobey Maguire come back, like, again, that's my, that to me that's my Spider-Man. That's what I grew up on. That like, I love those movies to death. So to see him come back was just, I mean, like, that was when, again, grinning ear to ear. It was just so excited to see him, and it was just great to like showcase, like, his involvement, like what he went through, because he was an aged up Peter Parker, kind of like what we got in Into the Spider-Verse. Not really, not as much, because that one, he kind of like, lost a little bit of himself. He, gained some weight and whatnot, wore the sweatpants over his suit. But in a way, this kind of like was that, this was he, like he grew up, this was a Spider-Man aged. This was like the Logan Spider-Man, so he aged, he went through his stuff with MG, and the one thing, like right off the bat, the emotional points that we get is, Peter is going from like, he lost Aunt May, and Toby's, Peter, Peter 1, Peter 2, Peter 3, we'll get to that, but he understands, he knows what he feels like, oh, like you just lost Aunt May, like, I'm here for you, like, it's okay, like, so that, I mean, come on, like that's literally like seeing them, like just seeing them back was just like, I cannot believe that I live in, like, there was always rumors that they tried to do a Spider-Man 4, they tried to do this stuff, but they never did it, and it just got reboot after reboot. So to just see those stories pay off, those characters that we grew up with, was just magical to see that. Like, it just, it was awesome.
Yeah, born on Tobey Maguire's performance there, and him being the Logan Spider-Man, so to speak, throughout those original 3 movies, I mean, he was this, like, shall we say, dorky, happy-go-lucky guy throughout pretty much everything except the end of the 3rd movie. He was just, living the life, so to speak, even if he had his own emotional problems. But here we see the weight of everything that's happened before him, and implying that maybe him and MJ are still together, but it's complicated. They're still probably trying to work out the whole girlfriend while being a superhero dynamic. But
always
he seemed a lot more self-assured, even if hasn't quite figured it all out yet.
Affirmations, bro, they work. He's got positive self-talk. He's up there. He's like, there was a great little scene that I'm sure we'll talk about here when he's talking to Andrew Garfield. And I think it was, they did, noting on Toby's performance, to be the stark contrast from Andrew Garfield too, especially in the scenes that they were in together, and just the 2 different sides of Spider-Man and everything. I thought, and the top of the rooftop too, Garfield was just sold that, like, even before he mentioned the word Gwen, like, just the way that he was like portraying how uncomfortable he was listening to it, just thinking about it and everything.
Yeah.
They were just on top. I mean, those are two world-class actors, those two, obviously, and had been in such great roles even since those movies have come out. So it was great to see them kind of be able to flex those different muscles that they didn't really get to as much in their own trilogy. So, well, not even trilogy for our boy Andrew, but
yeah. No.
Well, there's a lot of things in the Amazing Spider-Man that they weren't able to pay off, like storyline-wise, like his parents were they doing on the plane, all that stuff.
Yeah, because that's where it just got messy.
Spider-Man 2, but it's definitely an emotional closure for both him and Tobey.
Again, this really, it's the end game of Spider-Man movies. Like it's something that we've never even thought. Like I never thought in a million years, like I said before, that we would see Tobey back and Andrew Garfield back. Like who would have thought that they were able to pull it off, and they did, because we really got that closure. Like at the end of Spider-Man 3, he was just trying to get back with MJ and all that stuff, and he was getting closure with Flint Marko fading away, that he killed Uncle Ben and all that stuff. Even at the end of Amazing Spider-Man 2, that whole same thing with him kind of realizing, like, even though I lost Gwen Stacy, I still have a job to do. And then he, went on the bridge to Rhino, and, instead of seeing that battle play out, it just faded, which was their decision at the time. So, but to see that's what was so special about this movie, is just, this was 3 generations of Spider-Man. So to see everything pay off, which was just it was just so remarkable how they were able to do it. Absolutely.
It was absolutely a stick the landing moment, which I think they've done, like we've alluded to, in Endgame and obviously the first Avengers film. And let's get into it. We got the final battle on the scaffolding that everyone's seen from every leaked photo over the last 4 to 6 months. It's the new Statue of Liberty with the gaudy Captain America shield. It just looks ridiculous.
Awesome.
But
we need that in the real world.
Yes. Just incredible. I'll kick it off here. Incredible choreography in the battle for 3-on-3, keeping it entertaining and engaging throughout without losing track of what's going on. Great toss-ins with Doc. I mean, it starts 3-on-3 because you have the 3 Spideys versus Lizard, Sandman, and Electro, but then you get the toss-ins of Doc Ock, you get the toss-ins of Norman Osborn, you get the toss-ins of Doctor Strange, Ned, and MJ. Really just incredible. I don't want to steal anyone's thunder, but when the 3 Spider-Men came whipping around the corner, and then I don't know who it was because it all happened so quickly, but the one webbed them both and whipped them forward. I don't know if that was Tobey Maguire, but that was awesome. Fucking sick. Like that was what awesome. That was when you're like, okay, that's why I'm at the movies. Like
you got to pop at the theater like for that.
Like, 100%. And again, I think it was just that they were banking around a corner, but he literally just grabbed him and whipped him up forward. Incredible. And a lot of symbolism in the battle, a lot of like showing, what a lot of the critics of the Avengers and the superheroes talk about, this vandalism of all these, things that are just kind of out in the open. What did you guys think of this final battle? We'll get into the fallout and the multiple endings and the implications there, but let's just talk the action.
Sounds good. Okay.
Oh man. I mean, first I want to start off with one of my favorite aspects of this whole scene. Again, it was great. This was Endgame levels great of that final battle. Was the score. What Michael Giacchino did with the score throughout this scene was remarkable, because he had the familiar themes of Danny Elfman's theme in the Spider-Man trilogy. He had the themes of from the Amazing Spider-Man movies. It was just, I mean, that's what's great. Like again, that's when it grown up on those movies. That's what I assimilate Spider-Man to, those themes of what Danny Elfman did in the original trilogy. So that alone was just so exciting. That was the icing on the cake. And then we get into them working together, them realizing what
not being able to have that team dynamic at first, and then Tom Holland being the one to explain, "Hey, I've been in a team before. And we just got to get on the same page here."
This kind of happened this kind of happened before. I don't know if it happened during this scene or right before, but them commenting on the different fluid, the webbing, like, oh wait, Toby, wait, where does your webbing come from? It comes from me, like, ew, like that kind of stuff. Is that like that's what makes this movie so exciting and so like authentic and just real, is because it's those thoughts we've had over years of them doing an organic Spider-Man in the trilogies, and then bringing it like more familiar to the comics, like in the later movies. you know, but just that their teamwork, like it worked. It's just like that, you know. And Toby's been, you know, he's been around doing stuff and in movies every now and then. Andrew Garfield has been doing a lot of stuff, but like they still brought it. Like they still, you know, they remember how the suit felt. You know, they remember these things, what they did, how important and special it was to play those characters. So the three of them together was just like, it was just like beauty. Like I never thought in a million years, again, and I've said this countless times in this review, but to see that on screen is just like remarkable. I mean, you know, you're sitting in Endgame, like, okay, everyone's together. Like, how are they going to, you know, top this? This is how you top it, because this is just, you know, it's just in superhero cinema. Like, this is, you know, I get it. You know, everyone's like, oh, superhero movies aren't cinema, all that, you know, mumbo jumbo. But like, this is what you know, this is just excitement. This is what blockbuster movies are for. And, you know, it was just so great to see all that, the teamwork and the jokes and everything. They recreated the famous scene from the cartoons of pointing at each other. It was just like, just to see all that. And I don't even want to get to, I mean, the whole Andrew Garfield, like, revival was just remarkable. That happens later on in the battle too. It was just so great to witness this scene.
I think I want to touch on that because there's two points that very much allude to the past films. One I'll say, which is later on actually, is Toby is the one to stop Tom from basically bashing Green Goblin's head in, because in the very first movie it was Toby's Spider-Man, which was, you know, hitting him, and then the human side of the Goblin comes out and sort of stops him for a second. But then he realizes, oh, he's trying to play me, and I've got to, you know, jump out of the way. But it's Toby that stops Tom from basically, you know, going too far and taking his revenge, because Tom knows, and Toby knows, and I'm going to refer to them by their actor names and not call them Spidey 1, Spidey 2, and Spidey 3.
Yeah, by the way, real quick, I thought their Spider-Man numbers were like out of sorts. He makes himself 1 and then 2. I thought that was a little questionable. It couldn't have gone by seniority, but go on.
But Toby's the one that stops Tom because he's been there in anger trying to bash the Goblin's head in, and he knows, no, this is not the way.
Yeah.
But then just before that, what I think that was the most emotional payoff was Andrew Garfield, where MJ's falling off the scaffolding and Tom can't quite save her in time, and Andrew's the one that goes down and catches her before he hits the floor. And you see the weight of the moment on his face, and you just, oh my God. That was perfect.
Absolutely.
I was a mess after that.
Let's not wait anymore and talk about the Garfield overlying, you know, redemption arc, because he was shit on as a Spider-Man. I remember one of the biggest like critiques of him when he was like too good looking to be Peter Parker, when he think back on it, like that was ridiculous. But I mean, it just seemed like there was a lot, whether it was him coming through the portal first, so he wasn't, you know, upstaged by Maguire obviously being the first one, or if it was, you know, his acting during the battle, or his vibe, or, you know, spider bonding with Maguire by cracking his back and stuff, or obviously, as we're discussing the final battle here, saving MJ, which is something that was so monumental in the overall Spider-Man story, the MCU, that a lot of people from that trailer were just predicting that Garfield Spider-Man was going to be the one in position to save MJ in that situation. So really incredible, and a really build up. And you got to be happy for Garfield, because, you know, I think that I don't remember the media, you know, 8 years ago or whatever, when he lost the gig or whatever, but I do seem to recall it being pretty negative, painting him in a bad light or hard to work with or things like that. And he proved that he has a dedication to character and, you know, can really get that vibe in his own way, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and I mentioned getting the bad back. That was from the second original trilogy, where he's
yes. Yeah, wait. Oh, yeah, because he's going from building to building. I'm back. And then he's also talking about... Now, he mentions the existential crisis with the web shooting. Was that also kind of referencing, like, the dance moves and the ridiculousness that he, like, kind of went through?
That was referencing, too, where he didn't know if he wanted to be Spider-Man, and his trials were failing out.
Yeah, when he was losing his powers because of everything. Like, that was just so great to with that reference. I mean, the whole back joke, like, that was just kind of like, I mean, it was a little tongue-in-cheek, but it was great. I mean, of course it was great, because we remember those moments. We grew up on those moments. So to see that kind of flesh out, you know, it was kind of like, you could call it too fan servicey, but it was just so much fun. Like they're having fun, and they're having fun playing these characters again, So it was great. And again, they had the web shooters, where he kind of focused it on, like, there was a time where like they didn't work, and that because that was Spider-Man 2. That was that monumental struggle that he went through during that movie. So it was just like I've been saying, it's just so beautiful how they were able to pay off so much storytelling, not even just the MCU versions, but those movies in general. It was just great. Like I didn't expect any of this, and it was just so great how well they were able to pull it off.
For sure.
Yeah.
The part you touched on the Garfield. Honestly, guys, you guys keep referencing it, that there was rumors. Everybody kind of assumed that he was gonna come through. It didn't hit me until right before it. I was like, oh wait, there's more spiders. I remember literally saying it like as I saw him get wiped out by the glider, and I was like panicking for a second that this girl was just gonna fall flat on her back, whatever the fuck was gonna happen. I was like, wait, there's more. Like I had no thought. I had no thought. I was just terrified the whole way leading into the movie that MJ was gonna fall terribly to her death. I think it was from like the Gwen. I'm a big Amazing Spider-Man fan. I don't know how much you guys were into it. I was like, that was like I loved both those movies. Was really hoping they could pull it off a little bit better in 2. But the hype up to that, like the trailer had Gwen in her outfit that she wore when she died in the comics. So I was like preparing for that. And I was just like, oh man, they already have done this to me once with one of these Spider movies and showed her falling in the trailer and she died there. So obviously it's going to happen again. So that was like that payoff that made it worth it for me all the while. And for it to be Garfield and realizing it in that moment, that was awesome. So there was, like you said, we've said a million times, it paid off so many different ways you didn't even think it was going to happen.
Yeah,
but it was. Really
and remember, back in the original first movie of the first trilogy, MJ being dropped by the Goblin off that scaffolding was a reference to that in itself. So it's almost like Spider-Man's girlfriends are 1 and 1, and which way are they going to go with it this time? You didn't know. So when you saw that trailer shot of MJ falling, it's like, okay, we've been here before.
Yeah. They just always end up at the wrong place at the wrong time. Like how many times in those movies did MJ? Yeah, of course she's there and all that.
That's what she signs up for.
I mean, that's
she was just enjoying the Times Square parade when Macy Gray was performing. Come on,
but this MJ hasn't been in that position in the recent trilogy, so to see her in that was sort of refreshing and a nice. I don't want to say nice, maybe a partially traumatic callback to those past instances.
Oh, yeah.
Agreed. I can't even remember the name of that broad that was in the Washington Monument elevator now. I mean, that's just how far we've come in this Spider-Man trilogy. But let me get your guys' final thoughts on I mean, I want to say the movie overall, just because I know we want to spend a little bit of time talking about the MCU, but felt like there were a couple of endings, and obviously, as we mentioned with the Garfield thing, Spider-Man playing on its own tropes, just like Star Trek Into Darkness had Spock being the one that, was screaming above Kurt's body. It was this movie where we had Aunt May being the one to say, with great power comes great responsibility. We had Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man saving this trilogy's MJ. But in the end, to undo what you've done, it was going to take a little bit more than bounty picker-upper. We got Doctor Strange putting the spell back. And again, spoiler alert, obviously incoming if you're 79 minutes into this. But everyone has to forget who Peter Parker is. We kind of alluded to it. We were talking about where this movie has left the Spider-Man universe. But essentially, it's left it right at the end of where Spider-Man 1 was in the early 2000s. He actually... Through a course of events, he sees Ned and MJ happily into MIT. He has this huge plan where he's going to go, make a reunion with them and tell them who he is. Mm-hmm. And he realizes that they have the lives that, they wanted, and as much as he loves them, I think there's kind of a moment where he kind of, shuts it down. It's just like when Tobey Maguire shuts down Mary Jane in the end of the first one. So it kind of goes against what Spider-Man wants. But what he realizes is for the greater good. Again, a couple of multiple endings here. What did you guys think of how No Way Home was able to kind of land? Obviously, the movie stuck the landing with the appearances, the cameos, the performances, the action scenes. Where did you land on the ending?
There's also a sort of butterfly effect feel to that ending, because at the end of that movie, he wanted to get back with his friends, but he knew that they were better off without them, so he just moved on. But I was kind of a little confused at first, because the original spell that Peter Parker wanted Doctor Strange to perform was make everybody forget that Peter Parker is just Spider-Man. But what we got at the end, and I might have missed something, where everybody forgot about Peter Parker completely.
He had to change it to Peter Parker because he couldn't do the same spell again.
Yeah.
Like they had already had that contained spell. So if you wanted to do that spell, it would have had to have been the one that was all fucked up. I think that was the understanding that I got. Yeah.
And that's a great way to make the total reset happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you can't just do it the nice way. Now you got to do it the nuclear option way.
Exactly.
Yes.
And because Peter, I think the part of it was too that everybody was going to keep coming because there were all these, he's like, there's infinite universes, and how many people know who Peter Parker is?
Who did we see there? We saw the Rhino guys.
Craven was in
else?
there.
Okay.
Craven was in there. I think Scorpion was in there too. Those were the only three that I
They hear about Morbius? Morbius?
I saw that he might have been one of those two.
Yeah, the Rhino one was the only one I could clearly tell like who it was.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
yeah, no, I'm the whole ending. I mean, maybe I'm getting too far ahead with this, for the future. Like we said before, after Far From Home, the word was that this is going to be now a whole Sony project, and where were they going to go with that, and how are they going to explain that, which is going to be tough. Now, this whole memory reset is basically just, I don't know if they're going to continue somehow in the MCU or if Sony's going to go in a completely different direction. But they're basically hedging their bets one way or the other, just depending on where they want to go within the MCU or within their own little universe now.
And I think that's why they did it this way. But Amy Pascal did say Wednesday or Thursday at an interview that they have another second MCU trilogy now. So I think, but obviously the making of this movie, I think you're exactly right that they had to make it in a way that they could go whichever direction they wanted to with it, right?
Yeah, I only heard I hadn't heard that interview before, but I only heard that this movie and an appearance in a future MCU movie, which now is going to be tough to pinpoint where that movie's going to be and how they're going to explain. Well, hey, Spider-Man's back. Yes. You all forgot me, but this ending was tough. And you like at the end of Spider-Man 1, he's basically on his own in a rundown apartment, listening to the police tracker for any crimes. But now instead of having, he goes to visit MJ or he goes to visit Aunt May, now he's basically got nobody. There's basically just him and all the crime that he has to stop, not much of a supporting cast. Mm-hmm. So it's just a blank canvas from here on out.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting because, I mean, the way that this started out was, something we've never seen before, that everybody knew who he was. To then go to the complete polar opposite, where it was like, holy crap, like now nobody knows who I am. And I mean, it works for me, and it sets up for what they want to do for this next, 3 movies, because it kind of like gives it like a blank slate, in a way whereas, I mean, of course you're sitting there like, wait a minute, now everybody doesn't remember who he is, and it kind of gets a little funky, like because like does Doctor Strange still remember him or stuff like that? But I think like even because obviously Spider-Man still exists in that universe, they just all forget who Peter Parker was.
Yeah, that's
so like even with Happy
who the hell
Hogan,
does Captain Marvel think tossed her the Infinity Gauntlet?
I know, like
like even with Happy, because he goes to Aunt May's grave and Happy Hogan's there. And they start talking about, oh yeah, I worked with him and Spider-Man and stuff. It's like, but like there's so much like stuff that was integrated with these movies, with Infinity War, with Endgame, and with Civil War that Peter Parker, Tom Holland, Spider, like he was an integral part. So to just like wipe the memory of him, like really kind of like makes a lot of that stuff fuzzy. Because again, he played an important role. So to me, it kind of felt like at the end of Endgame, where we got an old man, Steve Rogers, at the very end, which was again kind of like, like you set the ground rules. Again, I really, really love this movie, but like you set the ground rules with what you're setting up, and then all of a sudden you go back to make it a little like, okay, like, but remember, you already kind of intricate. This isn't just 3 movies. This is a whole universe with what they set up with Spider-Man. So it kind of gets a little fuzzy with what they were doing. So, But
I mean, I assume that Peter Parker still has records, like he has a social security number and everything. It's just nobody remembers. Oh, he goes to school here and he grew up with these people, and that's
like, aren't there pictures? Aren't there like proof? Like they're gonna look like. Wait,
you mean
wait
Polaroids? What are those?
Come on.
It's all digital these days.
But still, I mean, aren't there like records of like did MJ and Peter Parker? I'm sure took a bunch of like cell phone pics together. Like, do they just get deleted, or is she gonna look at it like what? Like, I know that guy. But
I'm sure Magic is compatible with both iOS and Android.
I mean, that's the easy. Like,
by the way,
the Magic.
Are we? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut off. But speaking of photos, are we going to acknowledge that Tom Holland hit spider puberty between Homecoming and No Way Home? Dude was absolutely jacked in this movie.
Jacked. He got the Superman. He got the superhero workout.
He got Tony's secret stuff as far as the water
or Captain America's.
Oh, true.
It'd be it's going to be interesting, kind of how they explain how the Peter Parker implications, but. And it's different. So one of the story that this is referencing the most from is Brand New Day. It was done.
One More Day?
One More Day is the
story where him and MJ's relationship had to be wiped out in order to save Aunt May. They couldn't connect those two.
I do remember that,
he's still gone. Yeah.
And that's kind of what I thought. I thought that was maybe the Mephisto connection that was going to be in this movie because of One More Day. And I remember reading that story. I told you guys this the last time we talked about it. It was like, it made me so mad. Like Brand New Day, I was so hurt, like taking away the MJ thing. And it really was like a fresh, like him and MJ knew each other kind of, but didn't have like, they knew like they always had like some kind of sense. And that's kind of what they showed in this little thing. Like MJ kind of knew like something was going on with this guy, but couldn't place a finger on it. And so they kind of explored those a little bit. But yeah, there was the One More Day and Brand New Day kind of taking it from that. And it's such an interesting story too. Like, I mean, like the blank slate and everything. They really like, he can do more. Like it feels like the purest Spider-Man we've had to the comic wise, at least. Like not having an Aunt May is weird, don't get me wrong. Like I've never no one following Spider-Man has ever experienced that. She's still going strong, running feast in the comics right now. Like the movie MCU went further than anybody else has ever been willing to go in setting Peter Parker back like that. But I think there is a way that with him, this is just it's the most they can go to like the most accurate comic books Peter Parker friendly neighborhood Spider-Man stuff now, like because they gave him the greatest scale right away. Like we really haven't seen much neighborhood Spideying going on. We've seen like a lot of worldwide Spideying. So I think here I'm going to throw a couple things at you, all of you, and then break it down because this is where my ideas started kicking in here on what we're getting for Gord. So we've all seen Hawkeye, right? I don't know, like have you seen Hawkeye episode?
First episode. But
first episode. Okay, well,
I know one or two things that are going to come up.
I think that it is very potential with the timeline. The fact this movie, I did some research right after this movie ended right as Hawkeye is starting. Like it's the same December and we saw him swing by the tree at the end too and everything.
Where we know that Hawkeye is going to end up somewhere at some point.
And I would not be surprised if he is potentially in this last episode coming up with some of the things we've seen. And I don't know how the deal works, whatever, TV wise, whatever, but he has literally nothing else going on. There's nothing else going on in the city. He doesn't know anybody, and that there's going to be extreme crime at some point in the future of Hawkeye that we can go. I won't say any more than that for you, Mike. So you just know extreme crime is coming, which I'm sure you could assume. I do think, going back to our boy Ned, he was wearing a very orange sweatshirt the whole time. If you look at his thing, there is a character called the Hobgoblin who Ned leads in the comics, has a chance to turn into at one point. He's brainwashed. They retcon it so he got brainwashed. But the reason I think this could really work, we saw the foreshadowing of it, right? Him saying, I'm not going to turn into a super villain and try to kill you, Peter.
He literally
he wasn't going to
right on the nose.
Right on the nose. But so this is why I'm going back to what you're saying about what do people remember of Peter Parker? What do MJ and Ned remember of this battle? Like MJ still had the scars, so she was there.
Yeah.
So were they just there and didn't know that it was Peter as Spider-Man? So maybe Ned is harboring some like ill will for being put in this situation by Spider-Man.
no.
And he saw the glider, like he saw this dude flying around on a glider. And if we're to believe, like, it's just 50-50 odds. Like I said earlier, MJ in Brand New Day, One More Day, kind of always knew that she would, like, something was with Peter, and they ended up there. It took them till now, but they're back together and doing it. It took a while for them to really get back and break that spell that Mephisto kind of put on them, which is obviously you could see that would be hard. So I think that they will find a way. Zendaya's not going anywhere, obviously, in this trilogy. Like, she's a huge star.
None of them
They're gonna even if they bring in a different love interest, a Gwen or a Felicia Hardy or whoever else for in the meantime while he's trying to convince MJ of who he is, or they're rebuilding whatever. It's always going to end up being MJ. So your 50-50 split there is that our boy Ned's probably not going to be as happy. So that's one of my other things. And also, if he needs a family figure, you know what family is coming up soon. And he's also boys with one of the people of those family. I'm just saying that could be your crossover movie.
Yeah, that could work. John Watts, who did a fantastic job in this movie, his next MCU movie, supposedly. Yep. Well, not even supposedly, it is confirmed.
It is. It's his next MCU movie. So why would it? And Spider-Man is with that family an immense amount of times, and who knows how they're going to introduce them. What if they're from a different universe and they already knew a Spider-Man from that time, and that's why they like go to him? Like, there's a million ways they could explain it. Those are just the three things leading up, though, I think that we need to watch out for. Ned, I definitely think got to watch out for. Whatever the Spider-Man, the New York crime scene that's going on that we're kind of seeing happen, and then grander scheme. I keep bringing up Fantastic Four because I just really want something to happen, but I do think Spider-Man fits into that very nicely.
Well, Casali, thoughts on the future MCU? These three Spidey films, where they go from here? It seems like multiverse of madness on deck.
I mean, and if you definitely stayed after the credits, they definitely set up, a lot of stuff with Venom getting kind of transported into the universe and then transported back out, which I thought that was like a good way to lead into Venom and Spider-Man. However, when he got sucked back into his Sony universe, there was a little bit of symbiote that was on the ground. So I guess, that could lead into the MCU version or however they do it. And then we also got Doctor Strange trailer at the very end, which was awesome to see. I am so excited to see that movie, and having Sam Raimi come back and direct a superhero movie again, and his horror vibes. Hopefully we get a lot of Evil Dead stuff in there and whatnot. But I mean, as far as the future goes, again, this is, going from Far From Home, where this was a different side of Spider-Man. No Way Home is a completely different side of Spider-Man. So they have a blank slate. They could do, a lot. So, it's just, I have faith. I really do feel that, what they've been doing with this whole MCU and all that stuff, they really do know what's going on and whatnot. So I do have a lot of trust in that. And I mean, all these guys, Tom Holland, Zendaya, they all are, they work so well together. They've done great thus far, so to have them, of course they're going to come back. So, it's just, who knows? I mean, that got me excited. Maybe who knows if we get a Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, because this movie, I guess, it kind of still takes place right before Hawkeye.
It's the summer. It starts in the summer of 2024, goes into the winter of 2024, and Hawkeye is December 2024. MCU, obviously. Yeah.
So to have that, who knows, if we're gonna get, a little bit more exciting stuff coming our way with the season finale of Hawkeye next week. So, I mean, the sky's the limit, and I'm just excited to see, the future, of Spider-Man come back. I'm excited to see John Watts, take on Fantastic Four. I mean, they're really, and of course with Multiverse of Madness, to see how this brought in the elements. Like, we kind of joked about it a little bit, before with, they kind of did it in the past with WandaVision, where they brought back Quicksilver from the X-Men universe, but then they did the complete Ralph Boner joke and it didn't work. But now that we know, because this confirms like the multiverse like is real. Like they could go into
For sure.
different movies that Marvel Studios have never even touched and like connect and stuff. And we know with the Disney acquisition with Fox, they have, a lot of people. I mean, like everyone's like, all right, when the X-Men coming in? When is Wolverine and all that stuff? Like, I mean, maybe this is a way to do it, to kind of like go back to those movies. Like, could we see James McAvoy back? Could we
just to touch on that? I did read something that they're going to do a original X-Men and mutants like from the ground up. They're not going to be bringing them in like the whole Ralph Bono thing. That was just a tease for the multiverse. But I think they're going to go with original.
Yeah,
X-Men.
but I mean, like, of course, I'm sure like they could, they would want to do their own stuff. But I mean, that that could also have been just a cover up, just to be like, wait, like anything is possible now with this. Like, not to, I mean, again, who knows? Like they could do whatever they want, and I'm sure they're gonna pull it off. Listen, I'm just saying, like, if this is a way to bring back Hugh Jackman to play Wolverine, sign me up. Because he's been on record saying, because obviously he did Logan a fantastic job sending off that character, but he's said on record too, if I could do it in the MCU, I'd still do it. And again, that's just like pushing too far to the fence. They could do whatever they want, and I'm still gonna buy a ticket and sit in the theater and watch these movies and love these movies. But again, the sky's the limit. They pulled it off. They pulled the multiverse off and bringing back these characters that we know and love. So I mean, anything's possible in my book.
I'm just waiting for how they're going to get Deadpool in. That's all.
Well, no, right? I mean, yeah. Now with this, I mean, that's the thing too. They could, I mean, I'm sure they could, introduce, mutants and whatnot. But Ryan Reynolds is Deadpool. Like, there's no way in heck.
Whether it's original or multiverse.
Well, plus with Deadpool, you could kind of play with that. Like, you could play with that. Like, Deadpool, he breaks the fourth wall, so like they could have fun with that. Like they don't need to go buy the book with Deadpool to explain, oh, he's a different variant. Deadpool, he doesn't care. Like he'll just speak to the audience, like, oh, now I'm in a John Watts movie or something like that, or So it's just, I mean, the sky's the limit, and with what they're building up with these movies, we, it's funny with these phases, and everybody's always saying like, because the first iteration, the Infinity Saga, we had something that we were building to with the stones and Thanos and everything like that. And now everything is all over the place with the shows, with the movies. Not saying it's a terrible thing at all. It's great. And them really diving into the multiverse. There's a lot of stuff. And it just seems like they really, know what they're doing. They're playing with a lot of ideas. I mean, so the sky's the limit. And it's just, I'll be sitting in the theater grinning from ear to ear.
I mean, there's endless shit they could do. I'm watching Avengers: Earth Mightiest Heroes now on Disney Plus.
There you go.
There's 30 episodes of dudes I've never even heard of. We got Masters of Evil, which seems like it's kind of coming together in the Marvel Cinematic Universe as well. That seems like one thing I wanted to float. I did see it somewhere else, but speaking of getting the X-Men, speaking of getting Fantastic Four, speaking of getting Deadpool in this universe. Apparently, and I read this online, and obviously Multiverse of Madness is on the horizon here, going to be coming out in March, so that's going to obviously play a huge role. Wanda Maximoff obviously going to have a crucial role. Looking into research, there apparently was a crucial juncture where they were actually battling the X-Men and other mutants in the comics, at which point she says, no more mutants.
Yes.
And I've seen a couple of theories now to where with, the hex and how everything turned out there and getting her brother back, that she might try and do some kind of reverse of that. Again, like we've said, how they kind of change the narratives on what these
bring everybody back.
And she might bring mutants into the universe. And that could be the birth. And then again, you don't need to do the whole origin story there, but you could start your origin story with the X-Men and co from there. So I've read that. So I just wanted to share that with our viewers. And
I like that a lot.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they're in an incredible spot right now. I will admit that, and I've said it before, that in this, podcast alone, but I was worried about where they were going to go after Thanos. It felt like your original Avengers was a great, foundation, but you look with what they have with Captain and Winter Soldier. You look what they're doing with Hawkeye right now. You look what they're doing with everything across the board.
Look at the movie docket after this now. Like, we got Eternals, and Shang-Chi was obviously great. That was an incredible movie, and Black Widow was a story from beforehand and everything. But like, it's all like it's all heavy hitters. The next like 5 movies. I mean, we got Thor, we got Black Panther,
next,
we got
right?
Ant-Man.
Yeah.
We got Doctor Strange and then Thor, and then
Doctor Strange and Thor.
The end of next year is supposed to be Black Panther. Who knows what's going on with the filming of that movie at the moment? So I don't know if that's going to change around or not. And then I think we have after that Guardians, Ant-Man. And then the next movie after Ant-Man on the list is Fantastic Four, and it's still not. There's no date, and 2 untitled.
I'm sure that's going to be,
which might be a extra Spidey movie, and then maybe it's Maniac, X-Men of some sort with Wanda has some chaos here in this. The thing is, all we could talk. I didn't want to talk too much about MCU theories, especially because this next movie could literally just turn the MCU and shake it all around.
Well, let's talk about the Strange Supreme showing up in one little blip on that Multiverse of Madness trailer.
We got to touch on that.
Wait. How's Loki might possibly fit into this? We didn't see him in the trailer, but he's dealing with the multiverse on his own, little dimension. And
we didn't see him in that teaser,
I was seeing some conjecture. So obviously, if you see the second post-credit scene, it's I kind of talked about it as a trailer into a scene. It was kind of weird, but that was the vibe I got from it. But absolutely, I mean, I don't know if it's the exact same character, but the look and the vibe definitely seemed like Strange Supreme when he said, things just got out of hand. And the other, theories I've been reading again, and it's all about theories. That's what makes being part of this universe so fun. Is that Loki and Sylvie would absolutely be on the front lines of a multiversal battle. And just to think that they would come over and be like, and think of them trying to explain the Kang thing to Strange, and like, oh my gosh, there would be all kinds of madness.
Yeah.
In a way, the conclusion of the Loki series, at least the season 1, it sort of reset everything where, kind of like Spider-Man, no one knows who he is anymore. He's just a variant, hanging around there. So maybe he's got to resolve all his problems in his end first before he rejoins the MCU movies.
Absolutely.
Everything's on the table. Who knows what's going to happen next?
Everyone's got cleaning up to do, or they got a situation outside themselves that they got to clean up. No doubt about it. But hey, speaking of cleaning up, I think we all agree, gents, could not have been a cleaner execution of No Way Home. While we wrap up this review, I'll put you all to the test right now. With your knee-jerk reaction after only seeing it once, I think we've all seen the premiere Marvel movies once or twice, or at least multiple times. Would you rank No Way Home in the top 3 of Marvel movies?
It's number 1.
I thought top 5 was too easy. Do we all agree top 5 is too easy?
Top 5.
It's all okay. So we all agree top 5. The thing is, do you get to top 3? I think of Civil War. I think of Endgame. The one that really gives me difficulty is Ragnarok, just because Ragnarok kind of transcended your Marvel movie. A Marvel movie could be hilarious. A Marvel movie could be just like outrageous. But I will give it that 3rd spot right now on my knee-jerk reaction. What about you, Sally?
I think you have to make room in the top 3 for Infinity War, because that's the Empire Strikes Back of the MCU. I mean, Endgame tied up everything. It was basically like what people call the season finale of a TV series, where all the things from the past just came together, all the characters came together. People might criticize it as not a good movie, but a great conclusion, an epic conclusion. But there's part of me that doesn't necessarily want to say Endgame is one of the greatest, the top 3 movie in the MCU, but it's the ultimate conclusion of the MCU, or at least for phase 1, 2, and 3, so forth. For Spider-Man, do we put it on the same level of Endgame, where it's a great conclusion and a great wrap-up? But I don't know. I guess we got to let time tell whether No Way Home is up there in the top 3 of just great movies. Like, you got to put Civil War and what was the Winter Soldier. Winter Soldier's got to be up there somewhere in the top 3 or 5.
Winter Soldier's in a lot of people's top 5 for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't want to speak too soon, especially because I really feel like I'm just saying I really think this film deserves a second watch. However, from what it was able to pull off, from what I was able to do and pay off the original movies. Like this is definitely top 3 for me. I might even have to agree with Jake and go number 1. I just really had a great time. I mean, right now my number 1 is Thor. Thor Ragnarok is just such an amazing film to me, and so funny, and the way that Taika was doing. And who knows, since he's coming back, that could change too. The great thing is every movie keeps getting bigger and bigger. But this also just hits so much to me, seeing Toby and Andrew back, getting those moments, getting those, feelings back from not only paying off the MCU, but paying off those old movies. I mean, this really was something special. So, I mean, I definitely do want to watch it again in order to give it the complete thing, because, the first time you see something, you're just like, you're a kid in a candy store. You're just like, there's so much stuff going on and you're just having a great time. But, I really, really, really love this movie. So for now, I'll say definitely top 3, but it could be number 1.
Yeah, bro, it's top 2 and it's not 2 for me. I literally
it's on the razor's edge.
It's in the top 3 spiders, and it's not Spider 2 or 3. I'll tell you that much.
Exactly. I thought it was. I'm debating with Dark Knight. Like, that's where I'm at with it. Like, even levels, and it's not. I was talking to my dad about it after my family. We watched that movie. I'm like, it wasn't even a fair fight for Marvel movies though, because if you're a Spider-Man, first of all, it's the same thing with Batman and DC. Is if you make a good Spider-Man thing, that's gonna win out no matter what. Like, those are the two that are just gonna dominate. And Spider-Man, the first trilogy did it, and then the third movie obviously was like whatever. The Amazing Spider-Man had the issue of showing up on during the peak Avengers, obviously, and so I think that's really where it got caught up. And then you get Spidey in the this movie wasn't a fair fight. It wasn't a fair fight for me. I don't know if it's probably a lot of Marvel fans and have been watching the Spider-Man movies and everything. It doesn't count, but it doesn't matter. Like, it was the only even thing comparable to the experience. I'm with you, Parthum, is Infinity War has been my number 1 MCU since it came out. I think it's still above Endgame. I love the way that movie, like Endgame, you kind of know what you're getting at. Infinity War is perfect because you don't know how you're getting there. But yeah, No Way Home, number 1. And I'm 48 hours from when I started that movie now too. I was like, I'll give myself a couple days. I'll try to wait on it. I'm still going with it at least then. But I need to see it like two or three more times still, I think, to fully grasp everything I saw.
Couldn't agree more. Hey, gents, let's give ourselves a round of applause. Let's go. An hour 45, breaking down probably the most complete, most action-packed movie of 2021. I mean, the argument's definitely there. I don't know how Dune did in that regard or whatever, but No Way Home, there's no way you can't see No Way Home this holiday season if you're talking about seeing everything in theaters. So huge shout out to our crew here. We got Mr. Perfect, Mike Parthum, making his first appearance. We got the Majka Man, Jake Micah, saluting as always. And, of course, Mr. Hollywood checking in. By the way, you may have noted that me and Mr. Hollywood shared Thor Ragnarok in our top ranks. We don't always butt head-to-head when it comes to Marvel. But, hey, here
until our Matrix review next week.
Believe me, we can't wait. And we hope you can't wait, folks, obviously, for a big action-packed day ahead. And here at What's TrainWreck Watching, it's not about the latest news clip. It's not about the latest rumor. It is about